Greetings everybody, welcome again to another video. Today we're going to be reacting to 8 words Americans surprisingly don't use. Okay, this is going to be interesting, like Americans use a lot of words, but what don't they use, Let's see what these words are and let's get straight on with it.
Stood in line to say goodbye to our longest reigning monarch. And this very quickly became the most British thing ever, because something we like even more than rain is queuing up for stuff. Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to words. Specifically, words that I used all the time in Britain and fully expected to use again in America. Only America, being full of surprises, taught me that not every word we use is universal within the English-speaking world. One word that is universal is subscribe, so do that now if you haven't.
Go ahead.
On this channel, I've looked extensively at American English words that aren't very common in Britain. And now, just as Queen Elizabeth II would surely have wanted, Lost in the Pond is going to do the very same, but in reverse. Here are 8 surprising English words that Americans don't really use.
Alright.
With some of these words, you can almost hear them in an American accent, and with others, you really can't. And I'd say the latter is true for the word argy-bargy. And right now, there are probably a lot of Americans thinking, that's not a real word, you are a liar, Lawrence Brown. And I think I'd think that too if I hadn't grown up in Britain, but argy-bargy is a real word, and it means to get into a real audible argument with somebody. And while it sounds like a humorous word that belongs in Monty Python or something.
Yeah, like, to be honest, it does sound kind of like a weird word, like argy-bargy. That sounds fake or something.
Argy-bargy can be a pretty serious matter. See also handbags. You're confused, I can tell. That's okay, but after this video, I just want to hear Americans using argy-bargy in a sentence, because just how weird would that be? Argy-bargy. Because you really sound out your R's, and it just takes it to a new level of completion.
Really?
I think it's well known that Britain is well known for its well-known rainfall. And almost every human on the island has to have some way of protecting themselves from that rain. And I'm not just talking about bus shelters, although that is my preferred method. No, I'm talking about umbrellas, like the invisible one that I apparently have here. Umbrellas is, of course, the standard name that I think we both use in Britain and America.
Okay.
But in Britain, we also like to use the word brolly. It just sounds nice. It almost gives a sense.
Now that he mentioned it, I now understand, like, brolly. I've heard it before.
Sense of quaintness to the rain. In America, for the most part, I think you have a different relationship with rain. And that could be because in many parts of the country, when you get rain, it absolutely belts it down for 5 minutes and then stops. So you don't even need an umbrella in that situation. I don't know where I'm going with this, because Americans definitely use umbrellas. They just never called them brollies. What they did call them, at one point in time, was a bumbershoot. Some Americans I've spoken to think that bumbershoot was a British word, but it turns out that it was actually coined in the United States. And most British people have never heard of it.
Cheeky. Ah, you cheeky little...
This used to be a big part of my vocabulary. Because in Britain, if you call somebody cheeky, that just means that they are a little bit mischievous. They're sort of adorable in a I can't believe you did that kind of way. And so it's often coupled with an equally mild insult like sod or so-and-so. You cheeky little so-and-so. Sorry, Mum, that was the best impression I could do. She doesn't have a beard. And as I sit here now just sort of reacting to these words, I can't really think what the American equivalent would be. Oh, you cheeky little so-and-so. That sounds weird, so there's got to be an alternative. Whoa. I can't think of any, so just let me know in the comments below. And while we're on the subject, just a cheeky shout out to my patrons who make these videos possible. If you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond, you can do so today at patreon.com/lostinthepond.
Cling film.
Something I've learned in my 14 years of living in America is that some things just take on a different name due to branding. And one of those things is something that I've always referred to as cling film. As you can see on here, that is not how Americans do it. Plastic wrap is the generic term
it's what they use.
When I first moved here, my wife was referring to it by the mysterious name of saran wrap, which I believe is a brand name, but I can tell you this, that saran wrap, plastic wrap, or cling film does work on either side of the pond and is very effective for shutting up YouTube sensations. Don't try this at home, folks. There's a bit of a breathable hole I'm just going to see, should I do the rest of the video like this? Probably there's a bit of a glare. I don't know why I did any of this. It was just so that I could show you that cling film is exactly the same on either side of the pond, no matter what we call it.
Apparently, it is ineffective at shutting up YouTube sensations' false advertising.
Next up, and I can't even read it because that's in the way. Next up, flyover.
Flyover.
Where I grew up, in the English town of Grimsby, there is a part of road that you're driving along and suddenly it goes up over the stuff underneath it. And my whole life, this was referred to as the flyover. And it was magical when I was a kid, because when we drive over it as a family, I imagined we were in the film Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which makes no sense. The cars don't actually leave the ground. But when you're a kid, you hear the word flyover and the car is going up, you can very easily convince yourself that you are in fact Dick Van Dyke. But I quickly learned that in America, where these things are very commonplace, the word flyover isn't used. Instead, they refer to it as an overpass. And that's probably sensible, because Americans do use the word flyover when referring to flyover states, as in states in the middle of the country that you bypass when flying from, say, New York to San Francisco.
Peckish.
Just like America, Britain has its own words when it comes to food. Think of chips instead of fries. But it also has words specifically pertaining to the eating of food and the feeling of being hungry. And one of those words is peckish. Just about every 11 a.m. that I spent in Britain would see that word emanate from my lips. And I can already hear my wife's cousin Chad going, "What does it mean, Lawrence?" but in an American accent. And peckish just means hungry. So for example, I'm feeling a bit peckish, I might have a nibble, and for some reason I imagined Hannibal Lecter while I said that. So to clarify, we do use it about food and not people. And before we get onto this, I have heard it said that the word peckish did used to have a bit of traction in the United States, but it's become archaic.
Jacket potato.
Anyway, potatoes. This, as it is a potato that is straight out of the bag. Nothing has yet been done to it. But there are many things we could do to this. We could fry it, we could roast it, we could boil it, or we could make it into what Americans refer to as a baked potato. And it makes sense. You are, in fact, baking it in the microwave, usually, because I'm lazy. But it did take me a few goes at describing that very type of potato to Americans before I realised that we don't call it the same thing. To us, at least in England, that would be called a jacket potato. And why jacket? Because we're constantly thinking about the weather, but also because when you cut it in half, the sliced skin looks like a jacket round the potato, which I suppose is just another way of making our food feel like people. Don't tell Hannibal Lecter.
All right.
And now for the final word.
Oh, Americans use line, I'm guessing.
A word that I've seen all week on news outlets in both Britain and America, and the very word that prompted this entire video, and that word is queue. Thousands of people stood in line to say goodbye to our longest reigning monarch. And this very quickly became the most British thing ever, because something we like even more than rain is queuing up for stuff. Ideally in the rain, so long as you've got a brolly and a jacket potato. And the queue became such a prominent part of the week's headlines that its very definition seems to have evolved before our eyes. I can almost imagine a world in which 10 years from now, people will use the queue to refer specifically to that time that they queued up for 407 years to say goodbye to Liz 2. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of arriving at the fact that Americans on the whole don't use the word queue.
It is used.
They didn't even reform the spelling of it to remove all of the vowels, which would...
I missed that one. Where is it? Where is it? Bro, seriously?
Long-winded way of arriving at the fact that Americans on the whole don't use the word queue.
It is used in Boston, apparently. Okay.
They didn't even reform the spelling of it to remove all of the vowels, which would have been fair enough. Instead, they just simply call it a line, which, when you're thinking about it, under certain circumstances,
That's what I
that
said.
in Britain too, especially when referring to the monarchy and the next in line to the throne. And that's it for this episode. Of course, there are many more such words that didn't catch on in America, so let me know your favourites below. Wow. I'm Lawrence Brown.
That was an interesting one. Really enjoyed that one. Let me know your thoughts, guys, in the comments below. This was today's video. If you haven't hit that like button already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace out.